Welcome to the FullyCrypto podcast.
Hello, willkommen, bienvenue, and top o the morning. It's Friday, and you know what that means. Yes, it's time to dress up like an underground train and run around the streets of London shouting, "I've gone off the rails!" It's also time for us to cock a snoot at the week's crypto news, extracting anything that's worthy of further attention and dissecting it with a razor-sharp razor. So gather your children around you, hitch up your skirts, and let's have at it. Good day, sir! In another week dominated by the unstoppable rise of NFTs, content creators, intentional or otherwise, are beginning to realise that their work is being tokenized and sold by other people. Seeing something you created being sold by someone else is a violating experience, like they've come into your house and stolen your artwork and are making money from your hard work. But being a decentralised world, there is very little the creator can do to stop the sale, and even more so once it's been paid for. This problem doesn't just exist in the NFT art world. With the ability for anyone to tokenize any digital content, even the humble tweet, digital theft is only going to increase unless something is done. The question then becomes, who should be responsible for protecting NFT copyright? When it comes to copyright, creators of works have the legal right to be recognised as the owners of that content, unless of course they sign it off to someone else, and therefore are the only ones allowed to benefit financially from any sale. Forging someone's work, or, in the case of NFTs, tokenising and selling content without the creator's permission is illegal, and can, in theory, result in a prison sentence for the offender. Copyright laws are different in each country, but the principle remains the same. If you made it, it's yours, and no one else can sell it. In some countries, such as the UK, the work itself is automatically copyrighted in the creator's name the moment it is made, with no need to file for copyright. Other countries, however, require awarding of copyright by the relevant body before it can be asserted in a legal setting. This means filing for copyright with the relevant copyright body and backing up your case with evidence before you're awarded the copyright. This is what Craig Wright is trying to do with the Bitcoin white paper, despite his claims that he already has the copyright. Silly boy. Now, the twin issues in the NFT copyright world are time and practicality. It's just not practical for someone to file a copyright claim for every tweet they make or every GIF they create, even Craig Wright. And if an NFT copyright case ever got to court, this would likely not be used as an argument. Given that copyright claims can take years to go through the awarding process, this again renders the practice impractical. We therefore have to assume that the creator of the content is legally identified as the owner the moment the tweet is published or the artwork uploaded, and has copyright automatically applied to them on a global setting. Assuming then that a content creator is recognised as the rightful owner the moment they create something, what kind of protection are they getting from copyright thieves making money off their work? Back in the old days, you could easily arrest someone for selling bootleg cassettes of newly released albums from the boot of their car. Ask your mum and dad. But minting and selling an NFT that isn't yours takes just minutes and is conducted almost anonymously behind a computer screen somewhere in the world. With the transaction taking place in cryptocurrency, it's also very hard to identify the criminal, easing their passage no end. With hundreds of such transactions taking place on a daily basis, it is again impractical for the authorities to get involved. If the creators and the authorities can't do much to protect creators' copyright, we next have to look at the platforms themselves. The likes of OpenSea, Rarible, and Nifty Gateway allow anyone to mint anything as an NFT, with no checks being done to confirm the authenticity of a work before it goes on sale. Again, this comes down to practicality. These platforms simply don't have the resources to investigate the authenticity of every single NFT before it goes on sale, nor do they have the authority to confirm ownership in dubious cases. These are for law enforcement agencies to decide, often after the fact. The question then becomes whether such platforms are facilitating criminal activity. For example, it would be easy to launder money through a bunch of someone else's tweets sold as NFTs. NFT platforms will maintain that it's not their responsibility to confirm legitimate ownership of content before it's minted as an NFT, and as far as the law is concerned, they're right. After all, auction sites such as eBay aren't responsible for making sure that items on their site aren't stolen, so why should NFT sites be treated any differently? Let's say for a moment that regulations were passed where NFT platforms had to authenticate works before listing them, or at least investigate claims of copyright infringement. Each case would take up so much time and so many resources that it would immediately clog up the system and probably bankrupt the platforms, to the point where rogue platforms would appear that were entirely decentralized and would circumnavigate any such laws. If content creators can do little to protect their copyright from being infringed, and NFT platforms can't be held responsible for ensuring that the pieces on their platforms aren't stolen, who can we turn to? The answer is the community. It's easy for individuals to perform a reverse image search to see if a picture being sold as an NFT is the real thing, and the same goes for tweets and other written content. This is already being done, although the burden is falling on platforms to deal with copyright infringement claims who, as we have said, are ill-equipped to deal with them. As well as individual action from content creators, we may well see groups forming that aim to protect content creators' copyright, hunting down and reporting fakes out of a sense of duty to the space and its creators. We may see third-party services introduced that protect content creators to an extent, but this will only be a sticking plaster over the issue. The problem of NFT copyright theft is only going to get bigger as the space grows, and with regulations likely to have very little impact in the long term, ultimately it's going to be up to the community to step up and protect content creators. This week saw a rather unseemly debate between DeFi protocol Reef Finance and crypto trading firm Alameda Research. The kerfuffle erupted when Alameda denied that they had struck a deal with Reef to be a large-scale investor, causing the two to have a virtual bout of fisticuffs over who bought and sold what and when. It all started on a dark and stormy night last week, when Reef published a Medium piece explaining how Alameda had entered the Reef ecosystem thanks to a $20 million purchase of Reef tokens. Calling the purchase a strategic collaboration, Reef said that the purchase reaffirms that industry leaders have taken notice of Reef's team's capabilities, and generally made it sound like this was the beginning of a beautiful friendship. Indeed, Reef seems to think that one night of hot deal-making meant that they were in a relationship, proclaiming for all the world to hear that the pair were an item, even putting notices in several crypto newspapers. Alameda clearly had other intentions, however, with one of its traders, Sam Trabucco, or Trabuccio as it's probably not pronounced, posting the Twitter equivalent of a note on the form room pin board for everyone to read saying, "I'm not dating Reef Finance, I would never date Reef Finance, and none of you should ever date Reef Finance either." The reason for this eviscerating missive was due, apparently, to Reef pulling out at the last minute and not completing the deal, thus clearly not consummating the relationship. Reef hit back, saying that the $20 million deal had in fact been done, and that Alameda had hot-footed it to Binance to sell the lot quicker than you can say, "Is it in my account yet?" Clearly, this irked Reef, who told Alameda that any further hanky-panky was out of the question if that was the way it was going to behave, forcing Alameda to admit that, yes, they had actually bought the $20 million worth, and they even had some left, thank you. Fortunately, the whole thing seems to have blown over, despite the affair not seeming to have been actually sorted out as much as left to rot, like the other embarrassing Twitter arguments over time. The whole episode has reflected badly on both sides, and could give other projects that might have been considering catching Alameda and Reef on the rebound pause for thought. Cast your mind back to July the 15th last year. Donald Trump is still president, the covert population monitoring liquid, coronavirus vaccine, is still months away, and Elon Musk is tweeting about cryptocurrency. Except this time, he's joined by Barack Obama, and Kim Kardashian, and Apple, and Uber. In fact, a whole host of celebrities and top companies are tweeting about Bitcoin, offering to double any amount of Bitcoin sent to them and returning the whole lot to the sender. What a nice gesture! Nothing to lose, right? Nothing except your Bitcoin. Because as we now know, and to be fair, as most people with more than one brain cell knew at the time, the accounts had been hacked, and these individuals and companies were offering nothing of the sort. This obvious scam, which has been played out on crypto accounts on an almost daily basis for over 4 years, still managed to convince hundreds of people to part with a combined 13 Bitcoin, which today would be worth $760,000, and sit glued to their computer screen, just waiting for double their money to come shooting back to them. Fast forward 8 months, and the mastermind behind the hack, 18-year-old Graham Clark, who sounds more like a 52-year-old accountant, this week agreed to spend 3 years in prison as part of a plea deal that would also see him enjoy a 3-year probationary period once his time in Chokey is done. This is actually quite a light sentence considering what Clark did, which he managed by fooling a Twitter employee into thinking he worked for the company's IT department. Yeah, and you thought you were having a bad day. Despite the obvious illegal nature of Clark's crimes, he may actually have done the world a favour. This was by far the biggest security breach in Twitter's history, and one that could have had massive political and financial implications. Clark could have caused stocks to absolutely collapse, or could have precipitated what we should call a diplomatic incident, which is another way of saying World War III. Thankfully, Clark and his two accomplices, who face federal charges rather than the lighter state charges Clark faced, only used the hack to fleece Bitcoin from gullible morons, Bitcoin they have no hope of ever seeing again. As a result, Twitter will have completely overhauled its security systems and conducted what one has to imagine were some pretty tense staff training sessions, meaning that the world should never again face the potential of one person having the power that Clark had for just a few minutes on that day last year. And all for 13 Bitcoin. What a waste. That concludes this offering of the FullyCrypto podcast. If even one word of what just filtered through your ears brought you joy, pleasure, or for that matter a sense of utter injustice, please pop your like balloon, send up your subscribe flare, and shout our name from the rooftops so that the whole world, or just your little bit of it, can hear you. Unfortunately, I won't be back to pleasure your eardrums next week, but fear not, the following week will see the return of this entity, this all-absorbing, life-affirming beast that we call the FullyCrypto podcast. $69 million.